Welcome back to another episode of The Process, where we spend just a little bit of time looking at stats now so we can be just a little bit smarter watching games later. Braden Freeman is a 6'2" point guard who is transferring from George Washington to Rhode Island this season. You should be getting used to seeing his archetype by now. Let's start with the good. All-around decent playmaking stats with assist rate and percentage in the 96th percentile to go along with assist-to-turnover ratio nearly in the top decile. He also shot 44% from long range, although on a very small sample of 55 attempts. His steal rate being 2.7% clears the safe 2% threshold. Now for the concerns. 0 dunks, just 1 block, defensive rebounding rate well below 10%, free throw percentage below 70%, although a small sample alert here too. Only shot 33% on mid-range attempts. Freeman looks like another decent college guard who has a lot of work to do to become an NBA prospect, but if he puts up big numbers this season, his case isn't hopeless. Eric Reynolds plays for St. Joe's, and although similar in size to Freeman, is more of a combo guard type of archetype. His path to the NBA, if there is one, is either leaning into elite shot creation or somehow becoming much more point guardy. Statistically, Reynolds and Freeman share a couple of similar red flags. Reynolds had just one dunk and a defensive rebounding rate under 7%, not good. He also had a steal percentage under 2%, also not good. On the plus side, Reynolds did have 9 blocks. The big difference in profile between Reynolds and Freeman is that Reynolds leans much more heavily into shooting, but not as much into playmaking. He shot 34% on a fairly large sample of 146 threes and also shot 83% from the foul line on 60 attempts. To go along with this, he shot 47% on over 100 mid-range attempts, which is very good, and also shot 56% on layup, which seems better than most of his freshman guard peers that we've covered so far. His playmaking stats were all average or above, which is fine, but he would really benefit from even more distribution responsibility. Between Freeman and Reynolds, without having watched either on film, I might actually lean towards Reynolds as the slightly better prospect by the numbers, simply because he's got the clear advantage right now in terms of shooting at all levels, and there's just enough playmaking to be optimistic he can get there. But these are definitely two guys I'd have to watch more closely to champion one or the other, and really I probably already spent too much time here worried about two guys who likely aren't that serious as NBA prospects. Fun exercise though. Charles Bediako is a 20-year-old Canadian-born who plays for Alabama. As a 7-footer with a lot of dunks and blocks, there's no doubt Bediako is already on the NBA radar, despite being junior-aged. While he doesn't appear to have a particularly intriguing profile, we'll have to watch his development this season to see how much his draft stock is really worth. If I had to draft him today, he's probably a second-round pick. But for example, if he shows more signs of shooting or playmaking, there's some chance he goes higher than that. God bless Egyptian-born Elikhalifa, surely never to be confused with Mia or Wiz, although he does appear to be a whiz on the basketball court with elite playmaking stats at his size and even some signs of shooting. College Jokic? Unfortunately, Khalifa is not only super old, as he'll turn 21 at the start of the season, but he appears to be an incredibly poor athlete. I'm not sure I've ever come across a player at his size who couldn't manage one dunk in as many minutes as Khalifa was on the court last season. I did not watch Khalifa at all last season, and even though I think he's a completely fringe prospect, I'm still definitely going to watch at least one game this season just for fun. Who knows though, perhaps he's so talented that somehow it all works anyway. Trey Alexander is a 6'4" shooting guard who plays for Creighton and had a productive freshman season. There's nothing spectacular here, but his stats for the most part are fairly solid, and it's nice to see good playmaking in his size. Should note, I don't have it shown here, but Alexander has a May 2003 birthday, so he's pretty young for his class, which is another plus in his column. The main concerns here for me, obviously, are 0 dunks and low steal percentage. We'll have to see a lot more shooting this season to buy into him as a legit NBA prospect, but we'll be watching Creighton a lot regardless. Brandon Murray is a big 6'5" guard that played for LSU last season, but joined the mass exodus, opting to leave for Georgetown this year. In some sense, similar to Alexander's profile, in not really being elite anywhere, but showing just enough everywhere to be potentially interesting. Although it should be noted Murray is 15 months older than Alexander. The only real stats red flag for me here is the defensive rebounding percentage being under 10, which is pretty bad given his size. But given the context of LSU, who knows? Also note that he had just one unassisted 3-point make. Would like to see more off-the-bounce shot creation here. With someone like Murray, who really is in the age group of the previous class, it's important to keep that in mind. If Murray were a year younger, his profile would become much more interesting to me. Still, no doubt with his size and decent tools, he's already on the radar, and there's definitely a world where he proves to be draftable this season with significant development. Chucky Hepburn is a thick, with three C's at the end, 6'2", 210 plus guard who plays for Wisconsin. Clearly not a great athlete with just one dunk, and rebounding percentages all in the lowest decile. Can he get in the weight room and shed 10 to 15 pounds? Seems to be a good decision maker with an assist to turnover ratio close to 2. Need to see much higher usage and better shooting to be convinced there's some NBA stock here. Denver Jones is a 6'4" guard that plays for FIU. I don't have an exact birthday for him, but according to the NCSA recruiting portal website, which is pretty reliable for these sorts of things, he's already 21 years old. That's an immediate concern. Looks like he might be a legit shooter, especially given his near 90% free throw shooting, but with 0 dunks, just 2 blocks, and his steal percentage below 2, and combined with his age, there's a lot of other flags here. I don't think I'd bet on Jones' chances for the draft this year. It feels like there are already quite a few 6'4" guards with shooting potential we've come across that should be prioritized in this class, and you can only have so many of this archetype. Let's move on. So just when you thought we had run out of 6'4" guards, here comes Jaden Nunn from VCU. Not going to lie, his profile reads a lot like the other guys, except he's apparently senior-aged, which is pretty wild. Decent shooting stats on a fairly small sample and low usage. 0 dunks, defensive rebounding under 10%, and mediocre passing stats. At least his steal rate is a hefty 3%. But yeah, at his age, assuming I have the correct birth date, his prospect chances seem slim to, wait for it, none. Good news, bad news situation. Good news, our next prospect isn't another 6'4" guard. Bad news, Kino Lilly from Brown is another 6-foot combo guard. Looks like a shooter, but with 0 dunks, 3 blocks, and a 6.4% defensive rebounding percentage, an assist to turnover ratio under 1. Just like every other player similar to his archetype, he's got an uphill battle to be any kind of realistic NBA prospect. I don't think Lilly is going to break Brown's 50-year streak of not having someone drafted, Arnie Berman in 1972, if you're wondering. He's no doubt getting an excellent Ivy League education, though. Arthur Kaluma from Creighton, at 6'7", 220, is either a big wing or a big. Time will tell how much his skill set improves. If he's a big wing who can shoot and defend, it's a hugely valuable archetype. So it's easy to see why his hype appears to be building. I actually watched a fair bit of Kaluma last season, and every time I watched him, he seemed to have really impressive flashes of ball handling, shooting, and just all-around athletic activity. But then, I swear this happened at least a few times, after watching him, I'd go look at his stats, and some of my enthusiasm would wane. Why, you ask? Well, simply put, aside from having 17 dunks, the stats don't seem to back up the flashes, at least not yet. He shot 27% on threes and under 70% from the line. His steal percentage was a measly 1.3%. His assist to turnover ratio is a very poor 0.5. Sure, he had some blocks and rebounds, but not enough to stand out at his size, really. It should also be noted he's really more like a junior in terms of age, with a March 2002 birthday. At any rate, while there's no doubt he's a legit prospect and already on the mainstream draft radar, he's a brand that you have to at least be a little bit careful with and really have a good idea about what you think you're getting. I'd say Kaluma is one of the guys I'm going to pay very close attention to this season, so I have as good a read on him as possible before the draft. No, this isn't that Jaleel White. This one plays for Temple. He's really junior age because he redshirted his freshman season after a meniscus tear. His ancillary stats aren't terrible, even given his age, and at 6'7", you always get some benefit of the doubt if you're anything close to being a guy. However, the shooting here seems to be a deal breaker for now. He shot 23% on just 48 threes and 53% from the line on 90 attempts, which is really bad. He will at the very least have to maintain in all these other areas or hopefully improve, but absolutely needs to show some significant development in his shooting to get drafted as far as I can tell. All right, folks, so in this group of a dozen prospects, Charles Bediako and Arthur Kaluma are the obvious guys to watch this upcoming season. I don't think either is a likely lottery candidate, but there's some first-round potential in both cases if everything breaks right for them. As for the rest, I'm thinking maybe there's some hope for either Trey Alexander or Brandon Murray as second-round picks. And honestly, I'd be pretty surprised if anyone else we've talked about in this episode declares for the draft, but who knows? Maybe there's a world where Reynolds or Freeman really breaks out. Okay, folks, that's it for this episode. Please like and subscribe for more content. Leave comments if you have them, and I'll see you next time.